we've had this month's index, as I've said, really releasing and painting a dismal picture, showing that the employment rate has declined in the country in May. So really little dent being made to that overall unemployment picture.
You can dissect it. Just to put it into context, 2.5% down means a loss of 51,000 jobs during the month, which is a significant result. It's about 150,000 on a quarterly basis. So it is a really dismal picture, but this time it's been isolated in particular sectors. So we've seen construction employment decline heavily, manufacturing employment and government-related employment decline heavily. So I think it's isolated to specific parts of the economy. So it's still consistent with a recovery, but the construction and manufacturing sectors are lagging well behind. And we would expect them to come on stream when the economy is in a stronger condition.
Of course, that is interesting because just last week we had, only the construction space within the BER Business Confidence Index seeing an increase in levels. And today's data, that significant drop, as you've said, in unemployment coming through from the construction space, it was just over a 20% fall that we saw that. To what extent do we read those confidence levels as a precursor of better things to come?
Well, I think undoubtedly, an improvement in the economy will lead to an improvement in the construction sector, and employment will follow that. But I think at the moment, the ability, even though construction managers may be more optimistic, their pipelines may be improving, I think their ability to raise capital is still significantly impeded. Eskom, which is a huge consumer of construction services, is still battling with the capital raising, which has put a lot of pressure on big construction companies. So, I think construction has its specific issues, but it will certainly pick up. And employment we're expecting in construction will be picking up by the end of the year.
Within that scenario, what it does do is place emphasis on government's role still in terms of creating jobs.
Well, I think this is the extraordinary thing. We've had lots of attention paid to job creation from government. We've had the new growth path. We've had a variety of initiatives. But no one is really talking about the issues, the big issues, which are labour laws and regulations. In this month's study, we look quite closely at the World Economic Forum, which is a grouping of the 1,000 largest multinationals in the world. So it's a very business-friendly organization. And they evaluate the competitiveness of 139 countries around the world. South Africa ranks the 7th lowest country from the perspective of our labour laws and regulations. Our private sector, things like productivity in the private sector, things like the professional merits of our management and how they're appointed, those things score incredibly well, in some cases as well as developed countries. But our government intervention in the labour market is some of the worst in the world.
Of course, we've highlighted just some of the distinctions that have to be made within this report that has been released today. Another is that South Africa does have a dichotomous labour market with a surplus of unskilled and low-skilled workers who can't find jobs, while there are almost 1 million vacant positions for highly skilled workers. That's according to Adcorp's latest employment index as well. And Samantha Loring investigated the trend of a large and growing skills shortage at the top end of the market. Let's take a look.
A trained German engineer immigrated to South Africa 5 years ago. He's the purchasing manager for US truck company NC2, importing equipment like Caterpillars into the country. Houseman is negotiating with the IDC and Trade Ministry to localize production.
One thing is throwing money at this problem to create jobs, but the other problem is to have the structures and the management there also in place at the companies, at the suppliers. And therefore you need highly skilled employees to do that. It's hard to find highly skilled employees to run these companies. Yeah? The workers are not the issue to find in South Africa. There's enough available and you can train them easy. But to find the people running the companies in a proper way that you can survive, That will be the problem. They will bring expats in, like a lot of international companies do that so far, if they don't find them for reasonable salary or if they're not available here in the country.
South Africa's universities, the main source of highly skilled workers, are just not able to keep pace with the increasing demand for professionals. Wits Engineering School is one of the 7 engineering faculties in South Africa, producing around 1,800 engineering graduates a year. Now, the Department of Higher Education aims to produce 15,000 new graduates by 2014. At this rate, we'll only have over 7,000 by this date, which is way short of the 15,000 target.
The numbers are limited by our physical space that we have, as well as the number of staff members that we've got that can look after them. The nature of the grade 12 student that we take in, they've got very good qualities, and then they've got other qualities which is not as good in terms of studying further at university.
Manufacturers have cited a skills shortage as one of the key factors limiting their ability to grow.
We've seen in the past in South Africa, we've really grown. We've imported engineers, management skills, and areas where we have a deficit of. It's not going to put South Africans out of work at all. It's going to actually create employment. So one of the cornerstones we're looking at is to encourage immigration, encourage skilled people to come into this country and assist us in the skill shortage.
Adcorp Holdings, the biggest recruitment agency in South Africa, placing over 200,000 jobs a year, believes the country's immigration laws make it difficult for employers to import skills to plug the gap.
Immigration laws since 2002, which was supposed to make it easier for foreigners to find work in South Africa, have actually made it substantially harder. And during this year, in April 2011, in fact, the Immigrations Amendment Act, which is now before the National Council of Provinces, will make it substantially harder by outlawing immigration practitioners, agents who used to make applications on your behalf as a foreigner, and also by banning quota work permits, really where companies apply for work permits for a whole group of people.
London-born commodities trader Mark-Jan Sifsky had a hard time obtaining a work permit when he arrived on local shores 5 years ago.
It really is a complete mission to get all the documentation together. It's not just Home Affairs, but it's the documentation that you need to submit to Home Affairs, which is a problem. The South African Qualifications Association, SAQA for short, they took 6 months just to process my qualifications from the UK. So that's 6 months prior to submitting to Home Affairs, which usually takes between 3 and 4 months if you're lucky.
It isn't very transparent on the website there. They don't issue all the documents that is required on the website. So when you go there with your application, you find out you need to bring something else on top. And it's always a little bit frightening going to Home Affairs, long queues there, a lot of people there.
According to the government or Department of Home Affairs, the backlog is 3 to 4 months in processing work applications from foreigners. In reality, my sources tell me internally that there are up to 7-year delays in processing a work permit application for a foreigner.
CNBC Africa made numerous requests to the Department of Home Affairs for an interview, but received no response.
Work permit applications, which in the 1990s were commonplace, have just dried up altogether in South Africa. Foreigners are clearly being turned away. They're not interested in a process that is going to take anywhere between 2 and 7 years. With high skills, they have many opportunities elsewhere in the world. There are many countries desperate for their skills. So I think definitely our immigration laws are turning away foreigners, and not in the tens of thousands, in the hundreds of thousands. Have become resigned to the fact that our workplaces are going to be overwhelmingly South African. We're not going to benefit from the foreign skills that we need in this country to introduce new work practices, to revitalize and modernize our economy. Immigration is one of the catastrophic areas of policy in South Africa.
While government's top priority right now is job creation for South Africans, the country needs foreign businesses like Norbert Hausman's US truck company to drive skills transfer and ensure there's necessary manpower at all levels.
So there we have it, Loane. I mean, what you were talking about earlier, that lack of competitiveness, really exacerbating the problem that we already have, where there's this sharp division between highly skilled employment and then low skilled employment. So, how are you reading the scenario moving forward? What needs to be done?
Well, the first thing to address skilled shortages is to open up the floodgates. Last week, the Ministry of Home Affairs announced that they would be releasing 50,000 work permits to foreigners a year. I think that's wishful thinking. There's no way that the process is ready to do that. But they need more like 100,000 work permits for foreigners a year. That will address the shortage of skill at the high end, and really it's that simple. At the
And
low end,
undoubtedly raise quite a lot of debate as well.
I'm sure it will raise a lot of debate. You know, South Africans, this artificial shortage we have because of immigration laws suits professionals very well. People like you and me, our wages are escalating at a rate because we have this artificial government-induced shortage of skill. But it isn't beneficial to the economy. Companies are sitting with unfilled positions, skills they need to explore economic opportunities they simply can't do.
We had John Lewis in studio a while ago, and he had highlighted that one of the benefits of a stronger rand in the current environment is that, in fact, we are keeping some of our skill set at least home. Have we seen that trend emerge?
Oh yes, in fact the homecoming revolution that was started by First National Bank some time ago has been an enormous success. Many South Africans who pursued work opportunities abroad found that the jobs they had were much more insecure and tenuous than they ever thought possible. And with 4 or 5 years out of their local South African workplace, they've lost many of their networks to find work. So we've had nearly 200,000 South Africans return to the country since the year 2000. And also very much linked to the fact that there are no jobs available abroad. So yes, it cuts both ways. You're quite right.